everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're talking about taquitos ahogados. Now this is related to something that probably a lot of you know, which is a rolled taco that's fried, what's often called a taco dorado in Mexico. But we're going to actually douse them with a brothy tomato sauce and put this really beautiful crunchy cabbage garnish on it. This is absolutely one of my favorite things. And when you think about the little tacos dorados, the little rolled tacos that are crispy, maybe you dip them in a salsa and some guacamole, they're really delicious. You put them in this sauce and put the garnish on them and it just elevates them to a new level. Very easy to make and I think incredibly family friendly. So a lot of you I think are going to really like that part of it. Let's make the sauce first. I've peeled 4 cloves of garlic here and I'm going to do my typical thing here, which is to blanch them in the microwave. I've got a couple of serrano chilies. You could go 1, you could go none if you don't want to make this part spicy. This cannot be a spicy dish if you don't want it to be a spicy dish. But I'm going to cut those guys up, sort of rough chop like that, put them into the water, and then put them into the microwave for 1 minute to just cook them and blanch them. And while that's cooking here, we'll talk about the base of the sauce, which is going to be a can of fire roasted tomatoes, of course, during the tomato season. Feel free to do this with fresh tomatoes. Honestly, for this sauce, I would just take super ripe fresh tomatoes, cut them up and throw them into the blender, and we will blend them with the blanched garlic and the serrano chilies. And by the way, don't get hung up at all on serrano chilies. If you have jalapenos, those will be just fine here. If you're growing something in your garden, that will be welcome in this kind of a dish. Or like I said, if you don't want anything that's very spicy at all, you can simply leave this out. If I had no fresh chilies, I'd probably reach for a dried chili like an arbol chili and just break it up and put it into the blender, because we're going to blend this until it is completely smooth. Now, with the blanched stuff here, remember it's going to be hot when you take it out. So I have to grab it with a towel and and yes, those serranos are spicy, and I just breathed in a whole bunch of that. Okay, so I'm going to take the dish and just tip off the water here. You can see it's still steaming. Put that into the blender jar, put it on, and then we're going to blend this smooth, as I said. Now that mixture we will put into a small saucepan here and then add some chicken broth to this. I'm going to make a meat version, so chicken broth would be welcome in this. I will put the fire on just a kind of medium here and bring it, wrong burner, and bring it up to a simmer, and then we're just going to let that coast. I will season that in just a minute once it has hit that simmer. Now let's go on to the fresh crunchy garnish for this. It's typically done with some cabbage, and I would recommend for the tenderness, either Napa cabbage, which is what I'm using here, and we use a lot of it at our restaurant because I just absolutely love the stuff. Or you could use Savoy cabbage, which will look like a head, but it'll be the more tender pieces, or just use regular cabbage, whatever you can get your hands on. And I just need a couple of cups of it, and I want it to be sliced quite thin here. So it's going to take a little less than half of this head here to give me the couple of cups that I want. One more slice off of it there. And then I will put that into a bowl with a little bit of sliced red onion. You can use white onion for this, but red gives you a beautiful color contrast. This is sort of a large onion, and I need half of a small onion, so I'm going to actually just use half of this guy here, and I need to cut that core out so that my pieces will fall apart, and then just thinly slice it. Now, I like to thinly slice an onion until I get to about that much of it, then tip it over and start again, just because it's easier to balance while I'm doing it. Okay, so about that much. So you could see it's not even a cup full of sliced onion. That will be the right proportion for this. And then we have the last thing to put in there would be cilantro. And what I'm going to do is to chop the cilantro in a standard fashion, which would be to grab some of it like this. And then, I'll get rid of that guy. Bunch it up and then cut crosswise, stems and all, to a very thin chiffonade of it. And when I kind of run out and I mostly just have stem there, then I will pitch that into my compost bowl there. Cut up those last little bits. And I'm going to take half of this mixture and add it to this. Season this with salt. It'll take about a half a teaspoon or so here. And then I'm going to season it with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. The type of vinegar doesn't really matter here. It'll take a couple of tablespoons. And then I'm going to toss all of that around and then give it a taste, because we want it to be this beautiful, not only crunchy, fresh counterpoint, but we want it to be a tangy counterpoint as well to the little fried tacos here. Okay, let's see what that tastes like. It's pretty close. I'm just going to give it a touch more of the salt there. And then let's talk about the meat for these. You can feel free to use any kind of cooked meat that you can pull into large shreds. Now, what I've got here is carnitas. The grocery store, the Mexican grocery store near my house, always has carnitas, so I can go up there and buy that, and everybody will love it. They're really, really delicious. Some leftover roast pork, or some braised beef, or some chicken that's been poached or grilled that you can pull into large shreds. Any of those will work. To make a dozen of these, you need roughly 3 cups full of the meat, and I'm going to season it with this is carnitas, and it's already been salted, so I don't need to add any salt to it at all. But I'm going to add a little bit of cilantro and kind of mix that in. Now let's talk about the tortillas for this. So usually, let me just show you these. Okay, so what we have here is tortillas that are meant for cutting up and frying for making really nice chips. You can take a regular tortilla that is meant for eating at the table and cut it up and fry it, but they're going to be pretty, shall we call it, meaty. Some people will think that their chips kind of come out greasy and heavy, but these are actually formulated, and they're drier and more coarsely ground. They're formulated for frying into chips, and they're going to be the best ones for using for these little rolled tacos here. So we've got these guys. If I were to try to roll them up real tightly without softening them in some way, they would likely just crack. And then I would have all kinds of problems on my hand. So my standard way is either to fry them, and like we make these little taquitos in our restaurants all the time. And the truth of the matter is that we'll take a handful of those things, or I will say a tongful of those things, and dip them really quickly into a deep fryer, because we have a deep fryer on hand, and that's the best way to soften them up. When I'm at home, I do it slightly differently, and I don't do the frying one by one, which a lot of you guys already know about, but I will do the flipping of the tortillas over both sides and getting some oil on them. Now you want to make sure that you get enough oil on these guys. So sometimes I will just do them on one side liberally and then put them down so that the next one that I put on there will be oiled from the one below it. Just like that. But you have to make sure that you do enough oil on them. And just a tiny little bit will likely not give you enough to soften them, and they will risk cracking when you're rolling them up. Now we've got those oiled nicely, and I'm going to slide them into a plastic bag, or you could wrap them in plastic. The truth of the matter is you don't want to seal them in any way because they'll just kind of blow up when you put them in the microwave. But this goes super fast and is just as efficient. No, I will say it's just as useful as the frying one at a time, and I find it really easy. 1 minute. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, where can I get those kinds of tortillas? So they only would come from a tortilla factory. I have never seen them for sale in a regular Mexican grocery store, or any grocery store for that matter. So if you're looking in those kinds of stores and you don't have a tortilla factory near you, then I would suggest that you just get the ones that are the thinnest. That's going to be your best bet. And you know what? They're going to come out okay. Don't worry about that. But if you want the really thin ones that are going to give you the greatest amount of crunch, you'll probably have to go to a tortilla factory to get them. So we've got this now simmering away. It's going to need about a teaspoon or so of salt. And then I'm going to turn that down. Let me just stir that in really quickly and give it a taste and see where we are with the flavor. Those serranos are really hot, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good here. Okay, so I'm going to put the top on this and turn it way, way down to a simmer. I'll set that just slightly off there. And then we are ready now to start the rolling up of these little taquitos. These guys are going to be hot now, so you'll have to handle them carefully. Okay, slide them out. Again, remembering that they're hot, but leave them in a stack like this and take about 1/4 cup of your filling. It'll be about that much. And you've seen I pulled this into really long shreds. That's actually useful here in this. And then just roll it tightly and then lay it seam side down. I like to put it onto a tray, something like that, or onto a plate, and then continue filling and rolling until you're finished with a dozen of these guys. All right, these are nicely, tightly rolled. I've got about 1/2 inch of oil heating up in a skillet here. I will show you, this is the oil that I'm using today, but I will show you here it says for high heat. If you're looking for an oil for frying, make sure that it says it's for high heat use when you buy it. This particular one is a type of canola oil that I buy regularly and I like. But I will say that at our restaurants, we use rice bran oil, which I think is one of the best oils for frying. So if you see that, you might want to try it out and see if you agree with me. Okay, now I will show you just for ease of frying. You can do this without going this step. I will take 6 of these guys and I will put them flap to flap. The first 2 have to be, their flaps are together here, and then you just lay them so that the flap is right up against the next one. This will keep them from obviously unrolling while they're frying. And then I just take a pick like that and go straight through them. A little wooden pick will be fine for this. You have to make sure you're getting it in the middle. like that. And then I just crack it off like that so that it'll fit. Got a little tiny piece of meat here that kind of fell out, so I'll skewer that back up. Moderately tightly put together or packed together, but not too tightly packed together. Let's go over here and test this. Now, I wouldn't use my thermometer on this one because it's only a 1/2 inch. It's really hard to judge. So we'll look for physical things. First of all, I look to see that it's shimmering on the top. Then I know we're getting close, and then I'll just put a little edge down in there, and it's sizzled sharply. So now I'll just roll these guys in there like that. And we'll let those fry away. They're sizzling very sharply, which will mean that they're going to get done quickly. About 2.5 minutes on each side will usually be enough to get them beautifully fried here. Okay, that one came loose there on the end, so I'm going to take it out separately. But when I drain these, of course, I'm going to drain them on paper towels. I like to just lean them up on the edge of the tray so that more oil will be encouraged to run out, but there wouldn't be very much. Only if your oil is not very hot would you find that these would ever come out really greasy or anything. So they can be slid off here. I think if you're making a meal out of these things, I would take 3 of them while they're still nice and hot and put them onto a plate. Now you want to choose a deep plate for this. And I need now to get the brothy tomato sauce to spoon over it, or to ladle over it is actually a better way to describe this, only because the sauce should be brothy. So just ladle it and cover them all. Now this may seem odd to you if you've never had anything crispy that is served in a sauce like this, but the first few bites will be really crunchy, and then after that the flavors will the textures will start to change. Now you notice that I'm shaking the plate just a little bit to distribute the sauce around, and you want to have a plate that's big enough that you can put that sauce in there all the way to the edge, and then crown it with a little bit of this crunchy garnish here. And there you have it. Tacos ahogados. I've got to say goodbye because my mouth's watering and I want to get to eating these things. So thanks again for joining me. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks to all you members that are supporting us during this time. Make some tacos ahogados and enjoy them with your family.